Namaste. We are continuing with the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So, just quickly looking at what we have seen thus far, we first saw a detailed introduction of Bhagavad Gita as to why it is relevant to our lives, first and foremost, and what is the approach with which to approach Gita, which is that of Shraddha, which involves listening with a completely open mind without any conclusions and giving the benefit of doubt to the teaching while questioning and inquiring. And then we also saw the context of Bhagavad Gita and the war, Mahabharat war, in which it takes place, and the primary characters who are involved in the war, and also in Bhagavad Gita itself, primarily Krishna and Arjuna, but also Duryodhana. And we also very importantly saw that the central theme of Bhagavad Gita is freedom, and how freedom is the unconscious or conscious goal of all human endeavors, and how Bhagavad Gita talks about this freedom here and now. And this is exactly what Arjuna is going to be taught. So, in the first chapter so far, we saw that after describing the war environment, the war setup on both sides, with Duryodhana talking about his strengths and the strengths of the Pandavas, and then both the armies raising a tumultuous noise as a rallying cry to begin the war. Then Arjuna is brought into focus, and he asks Krishna to take the chariot into the middle of the war scene, right between the two armies. So we'll continue from there. So he says to Krishna, "Hey Achyuta, please take the chariot to the place between the two armies so that I can see them clearly." And as we saw already, different names of Krishna are used by Arjuna, and each name has its own significance. Achyuta means one who is untouched, untouched by pleasure and pain, by heat and cold, by any dualities, that which is blemishless and therefore untouched by the comings and goings of this world. That pure awareness is also within us, and that is what Krishna's name here is as Achyuta. So Krishna is asked by Arjuna to place the chariot between the two armies. And thus told, Krishna takes the chariot and places it, and he says, Partha Pashyaitan Samavetan Kuruniti. So this is the first word spoken by Krishna in the Gita, as we already saw. He says, Hey Partha, see the Kurus on both sides. And Arjuna sees all the Kurus, his relatives, his friends, and everyone there, and he starts trembling. He was so far filled with a lot of enthusiasm for war, and he wanted to fight the good fight and get back what was rightfully their due. But when he came to the battlefield, he saw that it is not what he imagined to be. It was filled with people he knew. There were people who were his relatives, his friends, his in-laws, and including his grandfather Bhishma, on whose lap he grew up, his teacher Drona, from whom he learned archery, and his father-in-laws and his brother-in-laws, and so many relatives on both sides. And then he suddenly realizes that, whoa, this is the moment of truth for him, so to speak, where he realizes that this is how it is going. As the expression goes, this is where the rubber meets the road, because now he sees that this war is actually going to end up killing almost all the people he knew. And he starts shaking. He says, my limbs are shaking, my hands are trembling, my hair is standing, and my bow, his bow is called Gandiva, which is the most powerful bow with which he has won so many battles, and it is slipping from his hand. He's not able to even hold it tightly, it's just slipping away. So he is trembling and he starts speaking, and he says all the things that comes up in him as the rationale for why this war is not to be fought. And that's how Bhagavad Gita is set up in the first chapter. And so we'll first look at this rationale, which looks very powerful, and we can also see the reason why it was so overpowering and overwhelming. But we can also then see what was the flaw in that sorrow, and why sorrow, by definition, is uh, not natural, and therefore it only creates inaction, paralysis in action, and so many other unwanted things which are not natural. So first, let's look at the sorrow. So he calls out to Krishna and he says, "O Keshava, I see bad omens everywhere. I don't see any good in this. There is just, um, you know, regardless of who wants, it's going to be bad because all the people we know are going to die." So here, as we see, he calls Krishna as Keshava, which is a very beautiful name. We can also look at that name. Keshava has many meanings. Keshava means one with beautiful long hair, which Krishna is described as having. And Keshava also means one who defeated the Keshi demon, which also Krishna did. But there is a third and more beautiful and deeper meaning of Keshava, which is coming from the three parts of the word Ka, Isha, Va. Ka stands for Brahma, or the creation principle. Isha stands for the principle that destroys everything, and Va stands for that which protects or sustains everything. So Ka, Isha, Va becomes Keshava, and therefore Keshava represents the total principle behind the creation, sustenance, and dissolution of the universe. In other words, the supreme truth. And this is why there is even a famous verse which says that all worship goes to Keshava. There is a verse that says, Akashat patitam toyam yatha sagaram gacchati, sarvadeva namaskaram keshavam prati gacchati. It says that just as water from the sky everywhere goes toward the same ocean, similarly, all worship and all prayer goes only to Keshava, because Keshava represents uh, this total absolute principle, which is the consciousness from which everything emanates, creation emanates, sustenance is made possible, and dissolution happens as well. Ka Ishava. So he calls him Keshava, and he says, "Hey Keshava, I see bad omens everywhere. There is no good in this at all. I don't want victory. I don't want any comfort. I don't want even security, because those are the things he came for. He thought he would get victory. He would get, they were living in the forest and now they can live comfortably as kings and they can have tremendous security. And now he realizes that none of those are worth it. I don't care for victory. I don't care for comforts. I don't care for security. I don't see the need for any of this, because all these enjoyments and kingdoms are for who? Because the very people who we have liked and loved all along, with whom we can share this joy, will not be there after this battle is over. Our teachers and grandfathers and uncles and sons are all going to be gone. And that's true. It happens actually. Even he loses his sons, he loses his uncles. Everyone is lost by the end of the war. But he sees that even before, and he's trembling. He's saying, what is the point of this war that will kill everyone? Oh Govinda, I don't see the point. And Govinda, by the way, is another beautiful name, which means one who pleases nature. Go means cow. It also means earth. It also generally means nature. So one who pleases the cows, pleases all of earth, pleases all of nature. That's another beautiful name for Krishna, Govinda. So, hey Govinda, I don't see any point in this war, and I don't care to win this war. I don't want to fight, and I don't want to kill. Even if I am killed, I don't mind, O Madhusudana, but I don't want to kill in this war. And Madhusudana is another beautiful name for Krishna, which means one who destroyed the demon Madhu. Madhu is the name of a demon, but it also means honey, and it can symbolically mean to represent the ego, which is tasting sweet like honey, but it is killing us like a demon. So, one who destroys the egoic demon is Madhusudana, which is another beautiful name for Krishna. So, he says, hey Madhusudana, I don't want to fight in this battle. I don't see any point of winning this battle, because even if I win, it is going to be at the cost of losing all the people I know, all the people who belong to me. And this is, by the way, the very fundamental problem of not just Arjuna, but all of us, is this attitude that they belong to him and he belongs to them. And we will see this addressed in great detail when the teaching begins by Krishna. But he now says, they all belong to me, I belong to them. And if I kill all of them, or if they get killed, or if it doesn't matter, either way, it is not worth it. So even if they are wrongdoers, because he knows that Duryodhana and his brothers have done a lot of wrongs toward his wife, toward their kingdom, toward the people. And as a king, it's his rightful duty to protect first and foremost his people. So if the people are facing the atrocity of a bad ruler, because of which they are going through untold suffering, it is the duty of a true warrior, a kshatriya, to fight for the sake of his people. But he didn't see that. He said that even if they are wrongdoers, even if they are evil, even if they commit all kinds of crimes, I don't want to kill them, because what is the point of killing them, O Janardhana? He says. And Janardana means one who chastises the wicked. It's a very interesting name he uses there, because that's exactly what he's supposed to do here. He is supposed to chastise the wicked as a Kshatriya, as a fighter. And he is hesitating from doing that while calling Krishna by that very name, that one who chastises the wicked, Janardana. Anyway, so he basically, his whole rationale is that I don't see any gain from this endeavor, either in the seen or the unseen. In technically it's called drishtaphala and adrishtaphala. Drishtaphala means that fruit of action which we can see and experience. Adrishtaphala means that fruit of action which we cannot see, but it is there. And this is where people believe in heaven and hell and afterlife and better next life and all the rest. But he basically says that either way, it doesn't seem right to me, because the seen result will be that everybody is gone, the whole place will be um, empty. All the people who belong to me and who I belong to will all be not there to enjoy this. And therefore, there's nothing to enjoy. The seen fruit will be definitely not enjoyable. And the unseen fruit will also be not enjoyable, because if I end up killing all these people, then I will only go to hell. I will not have any good fruit that comes out of it in the afterlife. This is how he sees it. And he basically says, therefore, that even if the Kauravas don't consider us our people, that is, if by Kauravas he means the Dhartarashtras, the sons of Dhritarashtra, even if they don't consider us our people and they have betrayed us and they have always cheated on us, they have tried to kill us, they have done all of that, still they are our family. And those who are fighting with them are our family. And therefore, it is a sin to kill family. And not only is it a sin to kill family, but it also kills dharma. That's his other rationale. He says that if I kill my own clan, the whole clan will be killed. And if the entire clan is killed, then dharma is lost, because dharma is not held in books, but it is held by people. People who live dharma and pass it on to the next generation is how dharma comes. And Arjuna makes this argument that because all these people will be killed, dharma itself will be lost. So, what good it is for me to win a battle when not only will I not be able to enjoy the results, but the very dharma, the very righteousness will be lost, because there will be no one practicing righteousness. These are all his the powerful rationale that he comes up with to not fight, because his sorrow, his grief is overpowering. And he also adds that if all the men are killed, then there will be no protection for the women either. And this is a very natural thing we can see, especially in those days when life was tough, that you needed, there was clear division of labor, and men were the ones to go out and fight the elements and all the rest, and women were the nurturing, nourishing playing the nourishing role. And if women, if all the men are killed, then there is nobody to provide that protection in terms of going out and getting the food and fighting the elements and all the rest that's necessary. So this is a very natural thing, and we can even see it today that there are both these elements. There is the masculine and the feminine. It doesn't have to necessarily be men and women, though predominantly masculine element is in men and feminine element is in women. And it is to be honored, these differences, and not there is a tendency to equate everything, which in practical reality doesn't work. And therefore, even within us, the feminine is to be honored, and even within women, the masculine is to be honored. And we have to be aware of it. And therefore, what Arjuna says here is a very valid point, that if all the men are killed, then the predominant masculine element will be gone, and therefore there will be no balance in society. That's basically what he's saying, and which also means there will be more adharma or unrighteousness and confusion. Now, here, one important thing to look into is the word dharma itself, because it comes over and over again. And so the question is, what is dharma? Because dharma is a very complex word, and it has all kinds of meanings. It starts from a very, some people use it to mean even a religion, which is a particular way to interpret it, limited interpretation. And all the way, dharma is interpreted as one's very freedom itself, because dharma is that which supports. It comes from the root uh, dharayati, basically that which supports. So anything, so in the ultimate sense, what holds everything is freedom. But in a limited sense, there are many things that hold us, and so dharma can be used for all those things. And in this context, and in many such contexts, when we especially talk of dharma as one of the purusharthas, it is meant to imply those aspects of living that support a smooth functioning of society, both, and also the individual. That is both individually and societally. That which provides harmony and smooth functioning is dharma. That's one way to look at it. And there are, of course, many aspects of it which is important to be aware of. There is something called the universal dharma there, right? That is that for us, for the smooth functioning, one everybody has to follow certain codes of living, which is that you don't hurt others, you don't uh, unless there is a valid reason. If the other person is causing more harm, then there is a provision where the other person needs to be punished, because that's part of dharma, is to keep the society from functioning smoothly, which means some uh, evildoers need to be punished. That's also part of dharma. But in any case, the universal dharma is to not hurt in general, to not lie, to not steal, and all of that. That is common to all humans. And then there is something called special dharma, vishesha dharma, which is basically that which pertains to what we do. So if one is working in a company, there is a dharma that he has toward that company. If one is working in a government office, he has a particular duty towards that office and that organization. That's called vishesha dharma. That's equally important. One cannot say that it doesn't matter, because as long as one is working for someone or working in any setup, there is a sense of duty toward that particular organization. That's vishesha dharma. And then there's also something called varnashrama dharma, which is layered on top of that, which is equally important, because ashrama is here stage of life. So there are four stages of life very clearly across all humans, along in all cultures. One is either a student or a young, basically an unmarried, single young student. Then one enters married life, and married life can be through a formal wedlock, or it can be, even in the traditional sense, marriage is defined in so many ways. So any committed relationship can be called a marriage, actually speaking, because uh, kanya dhanam, or what is called as the formal vivaha, wedding, is only one form of marriage, and there are many forms of marriage sanctioned by even the ancient scriptures. So, so any relationship one enters into where one has a commitment toward the other person, and then the family and children, that's grihastha ashrama. Then vanaprastha is when one is done with it, one enters retirement, and one is done with his responsibilities, and one spends his life inquiring into truth and also helping others, switching from being responsible for just a few people to being responsible for everyone. And then last is sannyasa, where one is truly established in that spirit of sharing and caring, and not having any personal attachment, and being uh, part of the universe. And then the varna is the disposition. Again, there is the disposition of one who wants to learn and share knowledge, the one who wants to keep order in society through protecting people and through providing administration and so on, the one who wants to create wealth through trade and commerce and entrepreneurship, and then the one who wants to work hard and support the other three functions. Now, this is again very natural. Of course, all of these unfortunately got fossilized through a system of birth, um, which got to be known as caste, and it has caused a lot of evil in Indian society in the last many centuries. The essential principle is very valid, and it was meant to be very fluid, because it's basically an understanding of one's own nature and accordingly fashioning one's life. That's as simple as that. So if you understand that your essential nature is one of uh, inquiring into knowledge, teaching, and sharing, then it's probably not a good idea to go into trade and commerce, and so on and so forth. So this is dharma at the varna ashrama level, and there is the special dharma of what one is meant to do for the role he is presently doing, whatever role that is. And then there is the universal dharma. So all of this combines to form what can be called as swadharma. And this is a very important word which comes later in the Gita many times, as to what is one's own dharma, swadharma. And this swadharma is how we can guide our lives to function smoothly, as we said, both for ourselves and for the larger society. And here Arjuna says that this dharma will be lost, because all the people who have the understanding of this way of living will all be killed. So this is basically his rationale. But it's important to understand what dharma is, and later we will see how Arjuna's logic was flawed. But the point remains valid, that there is the importance, the supreme importance of dharma in the functioning of society, and also in one's own pursuit of the ultimate truth, because being established in dharma is the ground upon which true inquiry can happen. So Arjuna's rationale is that that very dharma will be destroyed. So he basically essentially says three things, as we can see. He first says that there is no good in killing all my relatives and friends, because what I want to enjoy, I will not have the people to enjoy with, because these are the people who belong to me, and therefore they will not be there. That's number one. Number two, he says that I don't see any good coming out of it in the afterlife either. So the first was the drishtaphala, that I don't see any enjoyment coming out of it um, in this life. And then the second he says is it'll also only result in hellish existence later, because he wants to, he is thinking about this very effect, or the effect of these actions that will definitely last past this lifetime, and therefore how it will affect him and others. And the third he says is dharma itself will be lost. So first is he doesn't see any fruit in this life, second is he doesn't see any fruit in the afterlife, and the third is the society itself will lose its dharma because of all this killing that will happen. So because of these three primary reasons, he says, I do not want to engage in this fight, O Krishna. And saying this, he finally gives up and says, hey Krishna, therefore I have no greed. So he makes it all sound very, he genuinely feels that way. He wants to renounce. He literally wants to go into the forest and or somewhere and just live like a renunciate. And so he says, I don't have any greed for kingdom, and I'm even ready to be killed. I would rather be unarmed and get killed than engage in this fighting. And that's how this chapter ends. This verse is the last thing he says. We'll just see the last verse because that's how he sums it up. He says, यदि माम अप्रतीकारम अशस्त्रम शस्त्रपाणयः धार्तराष्ट्रारणे हन्युः तन्मे क्षेमतरम भवेत्. He says it would be better if the Dhartarashtras, the son of Dhritarashtra, the sons of Dhritarashtra, kill me while I remain unarmed. And saying this, he just sinks into his chariot, totally paralyzed, and he's completely overwhelmed by grief, and he sits there. But the important thing here to notice is that he sits in the chariot. He doesn't walk away, because despite all this grief and this sorrow and all the rationale that he has so far expressed, he realizes that in front of him is Krishna, and Krishna knows better than he does. And therefore, because of the tremendous reverence he has for Krishna, he does not walk away, even though his rationale is so convincing, and even though he is so overwhelmed, as we already said, he still stays there. He sits in the chariot, and he is this is part of Shraddha, as we already said, is that he's being true to himself. He's not trying to portray something for the sake of others, for the sake of Krishna. He is, in fact, giving the most powerful rationale for why he is not going to fight, and yet he sits there ready to listen. And that's how the first chapter ends. So Sanjaya says, as the last verse, Evam uktva Arjuna sanke ratopasta upavishat visrujya sasharam chapam shoka samvigna manasaha. So he says, Arjuna casts aside his bow, his arrows, and he sank into the seat of the chariot, overwhelmed with grief. So this is the end of the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And here, as we can clearly see, that Arjuna has presented a very strong case for why it is not right to fight, why he is not going to get any good out of it in terms of enjoyment here, in terms of his afterlife, and in terms of the dharma of the society itself. And with this powerful rationale, he sinks down, and this is how the first chapter ends and sets up the scene for the real teaching to begin in the second chapter. One of the important things to also notice in the first chapter is that it shows the qualities of the student. Because we may say, oh, the whole chapter has gone by, it's 47 verses, and there is no teaching, quote unquote. And but there is actually, because it actually, in a subtle way, shows what is the quality of a good student and what is what are not the qualities of a good student. So we saw Duryodhana first, going about bragging about his army and trying to just rouse up the army. He has no problem with killing everyone. He's just driven by the desire to enjoy the kingdom all for himself, and he typifies this mentality that the ends justify the means, and therefore he doesn't care about the means. He's got no dilemma, no conundrum. He's just ruthless, right? So that kind of a person who's not established in dharma at all, he's not bothered about moksha, clearly, because he's not even established in dharma. And so that is something to be very aware of, is that when one is caught so much in greed, caught so much in enjoying the pleasures of this world, and caught so much in one's own gratification, then one is not ready to even listen to this teaching. That is Duryodhana. And Arjuna, on the other hand, is very sensitive. We can see that these are the qualities of a real student, is that he's sensitive. He has got compassion, even though it is misplaced, as we will see how Krishna explains it. But he's got tremendous sensitivity toward his, not just his friends, but his enemies too. And he has got a heart that is full of compassion. And this compassion and the sensitivity has led him to this confusion. And because of this confusion, he is now questioning, he is asking. And the last thing to also point out here is that when there is so much sorrow and grief and confusion, there are two ways out for most of us. One is the escape route, right? Which is that I escape from the problem. And today also we see how this is even given as a solution to many, go and watch a movie or do something to distract your mind. And that is one way of dealing with the problem, but you really are not dealing with the problem, because it's just pushing it down into the subconscious, only to bubble up later and later with more and more force. And one ultimate form of escape, of course, is suicide too, which is also another thing we see in society. So if people are not able to find satisfaction in any escape in this world, then they go into depression, and in the ultimate case they even commit suicide. So escape from the frivolous to the most depressing is one response to sorrow, which is absolutely unhelpful. And that is something that Arjuna does not do. The other response to grief is inquiry, to go to the right teacher and to ask him, I am feeling this, this is the truth of myself right now, and I know you have wisdom, and therefore I want to ask you how to deal with this situation, and inquire. So that is the second approach, and that is the approach that Arjuna is showing. So there is that aspect as well. In addition to Arjuna exemplifying the qualities of sensitivity and compassion and all of that, he also exemplifies the quality of facing grief and responding to it correctly, which is to face it, acknowledge it, and express it to a wise teacher and not escape from it. So, this is the essential summary of the first chapter. So, as we saw, the battle context was set up, and Arjuna saw the battle, and Arjuna saw everyone. He was overwhelmed with grief, and he saw no good coming out of this, and he has approached uh, this whole problem with great sensitivity, but also with great reverence for Krishna. And therefore, he expresses Krishna, calling him all these wonderful names, each of which has tremendous significance, and sharing his predicament and asking Krishna to help him out. So, with this, we will enter the second chapter where the real teaching begins.